The cursor blinks at the end of a half-written sentence, and the phone screen lights up with a new message. You were finishing a quick email to a coworker, but now your fingers pause above the keyboard. The message seems urgent, so you read it, type a reply, and feel a small rush of momentum. When you return to the email a few seconds later, something strange has happened. The thought you were about to write has disappeared, leaving behind only a vague shape of an idea. You try to reconstruct the sentence, but it takes longer than it should. In the next 10 minutes, you check 3 more messages and reply to each one quickly. By the time you finally finish that short email, nearly half an hour has passed. The email itself was simple, yet the whole process felt scattered and frustrating. Most people would call this multitasking, and many believe it saves time. But if it saves time, why does a 5-minute message suddenly swallow up half an hour? The answer rests on a hidden cost that almost nobody notices while it is happening. Multitasking is not really doing 2 things at exactly the same moment. For a clear example, think about trying to read a book while someone talks to you. Your brain cannot process both sets of words simultaneously and understand them both. Instead, it rapidly switches back and forth between the 2 streams of language. Each switch might take only a fraction of a second, but those tiny gaps add up. Scientists call this delay the switching cost, and it is the first clue to our puzzle. When you glanced at the message, your brain left the email behind and fully attended to the chat. That recovery is not instant. Even a simple retrieval takes measurable mental effort. So what felt like a seamless back and forth was really a chain of small interruptions. This explains why a sentence you were about to type suddenly slips away. But the cost goes deeper than just losing a few words. Every switch also leaves a trace of the previous task still active in your mind. When you return to the email, fragments of the message you just read linger and interfere. You might accidentally type a word from the chat into the email or miss a logic gap. Interference from competing information makes even simple work harder to keep straight. Research on task switching has revealed that switching increases errors and slows responses. In one classic experiment, people classified digits and letters, switching between tasks on cue. Their reaction time was markedly slower on switch trials than on repeat trials. That small cost in the lab mirrors the hidden slowdown during a day of constant app switching. To see why this cost is unavoidable, consider the way attention actually works. Attention is like a narrow spotlight that can illuminate only a small area at any given moment. You can point that spotlight at the words you are reading or at a voice you are listening to, but not both fully. When you attempt to attend to 2 streams of language, the spotlight jumps, leaving darkness behind after each jump. During those dark gaps, you are not really processing either task. Your brain is reconfiguring its goals, shifting the rules from composing a sentence to reading a message. This reconfiguration is called goal shifting, and it carries a cost that cannot be eliminated. Even when the 2 tasks use different senses, like listening to a podcast while cooking, there is still a switching cost. But the cost is highest when tasks compete for the same mental resource, such as language. Writing an email requires language planning, and reading a chat message also demands language comprehension. The 2 tasks collide inside a bottleneck because the language system can only handle one coherent thread at a time. That is why you can fold laundry while listening to a story, but you cannot write a thoughtful message while reading another. Folding laundry is a practiced motor routine that does not require continuous language processing. The bottleneck theory explains why some combinations feel effortless while others quickly become impossible. But here is the twist. People who multitask heavily often believe they are excellent at it. Studies have found that heavy media multitaskers tend to perform worse on measures of sustained attention and task switching. The very practice that feels like training may instead be weakening the ability to stay focused. In other words, the more you juggle, the harder it becomes to notice the juggling is failing. Returning to our scene, the person writing the email feels busy and responsive. They reply to a message, then manage to finish the email, and their brain rewards them with a sense of progress. But that rewarding feeling can be deceptive. Each quick reply triggers a small burst of satisfaction, making the fragmented rhythm feel productive. The mistake was not laziness. It was a direct result of the mental residue from constant switching. Simple work becomes harder because every switch erodes the clarity of your goal. Your working memory, which holds the plan for the sentence, gets overwritten by fragments of the incoming message. No single interruption seems catastrophic, but their combined effect slowly unravels the simplest task. Now consider what happens when you do this all day. You start a report, answer a notification, return, then check again. By late afternoon, you feel exhausted, yet your to-do list has barely changed. The exhaustion is real, but it didn't come from a heavy workload. It came from rebuilding your mental state dozens of times. That reconstruction burns mental energy, much like restarting a car engine uses more fuel than idling. The hidden engine of multitasking is not parallel processing, but rapid, expensive serial shifting. When you are switching rapidly, you may not even notice the small mistakes accumulating in your work. Your attention is so fragmented that you cannot step back and evaluate the email as a whole. You send it, and only later does the recipient's confused reply reveal that your message was unclear. The cost of multitasking is often invisible to the multitasker until the consequences appear. This is how simple work gets harder. It isn't just slower, it systematically loses coherence. The brain's switching routine cannot verify the overall meaning while it is busy switching. And in the moment, you still feel as though you are handling everything because each micro-switch seems effortless. The most unsettling finding is that multitasking impairs your ability to detect your own errors. When you switch away and return, your mind fills in gaps with assumptions, not accurate memory. You may reread the email and think it makes perfect sense because your brain completes the missing logic automatically. This is why a sentence that seemed clear to you can be baffling to a colleague. In that hallway of rapid switching, the mental spotlight never stays still long enough to see the shadows. The email you sent was written by a mind that was partially absent for most of its creation. Now the opening mystery resolves. The simple message took half an hour because it wasn't written continuously, but in scattered fragments stitched together with guesswork. The fragmentation introduced errors that further delayed you, turning a quick task into a protracted struggle. And the most disorienting part is that during the process, you honestly believed you were being efficient. That belief is the final cost of multitasking. It hijacks your own judgment of how well you are doing. But understanding this hidden mechanism also points toward a clearer way to work. When you protect a single task from interruption, you give your mind a chance to build a coherent thought. Writing that same email without checking messages feels slower at first, almost unnervingly so. The quiet can feel uncomfortable because your brain has been trained to expect a constant stream of new input. Yet, within a few minutes of sustained focus, the sentence you were struggling with earlier suddenly takes shape. You finish the email with a sense of clarity, and when you reread it, the message holds together. No stray words from a chat thread have slipped in, and the logic flows from start to finish. And if you time it, you may find that the whole task took less than 10 minutes instead of 30. The feeling of ease after single tasking is not that the work became lighter, but that your brain didn't have to rebuild itself over and over. This doesn't mean you can never switch tasks. Life demands flexibility. But it does mean that if you want to make simple work feel simple, you must respect the limits of attention. The next time the phone lights up while you are typing a thought, Notice the urge to respond immediately. Let the message sit for 5 minutes while you finish your sentence, your paragraph, your single idea. You may discover that the most productive choice is not to juggle faster, but to put the balls down one at a time. And that simple act of finishing is what returns ease to work that was never really hard to begin with.